Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This will be my final annual report for Fertasa for the year 2019. It's been some time since we've ended 2019, but it wasn't possible to do this before now in July. But please allow me to report on the year for 2019. What does Fertasa do? Fertasa promotes the responsible, effective and efficient sustainable use of fertilizers and liming materials. It represents the fertilizer and lime industries in Southern Africa. It's got a code of conduct, which is very important. Otherwise, there would be no justification for Fertasa as an organization. It conforms to the mission and objectives of Fertasa. It acts in accordance with the letter and spirit of laws and regulations. Avoid misrepresentation and misleading information. Apply ethical business practices. Apply and promote production and application practices with a concern for human health and the environment, which is extremely important. And in the process, we have to change the MOI as our environment changes. The leadership of Fertasa needs to adapt to changing conditions, and the MOI is therefore not cast in iron and needs revisions annually, and is a dynamic organization because of that. Let me give you a broader picture of Fertasa. The permanently employed personnel be Dr. Pieter Houman, which is currently the CEO, Hermine Voda, which is the Conference and Administrative Officer, Candice van der Walt, Communication Officer, Professor Robin Barnard, Technical Advisor, Vuze Mashela, Technical Assistant, and then, of course, the board members. We've got six directors and one executive director, which would be the CEO. Then it's myself, which was the chairman for the last 2 years. Then Dr. Nico Hart from Omnia, Rian Bredenham from Intel Chem, and then Henk Leroux, NVK, James Moritova from Foscar, Martin Botha from Nutrico. During the last year, we had ordinary members plus affiliated members, which were a total of 65 members. Okay, the Fertasa number of members increased gradually since 2008 till 2019, with ordinary members being 50 and affiliated members being just above 20 during the last year. But you see the change. There's been a reduction in affiliated members. So the smaller affiliated members we allowed to become ordinary members, and that's the reason for that. Apart from the steady increase in the total interest within the organization. We've got committees which helps to govern the decision-making processes within Fertasa. First of all, the management committee, the technical committee, the regulatory committee, and the educational committee. All the activities of Fertasa that I'll be reporting on, that we are actually actively doing, is the Fertilizer Act and regulations, in which we are very much involved. Certification of plants, product registration, intervention, fertilizer quality monitoring. In fact, the first four that I've mentioned all relates to the Act and regulatory measures. In addition to that, we've got publications, training, events, sales statistics, and liaison with several organizations. As I've said, I'll report on each of these. First of all, the regulatory measures, the draft fertilizer bill, which was published in 2018. I must say that this bill is quite old. It's the Act 36 of 1947. And Fertasa has been involved several times in the revisions of this bill and is currently still. So there were several roadshows during 2019 organized by the Department of Agriculture, and Fertasa has been involved, and still the draft bill's not been finalized, the new bill's not being passed in 2020. But we are certainly involved in working on this and the changes that's related to this. In addition, the fertilizer regulations for Group 3, the new guidelines published in June 2019 is not fully accepted by the industry and needs further revision. In addition to that, the migration from the Group 2 to the Group 3s, which are really very necessary, needs to be implemented, but it couldn't be done in time. So we asked the registrar to be lenient on this as well. The competition law is also changing, and it now states that it would be possible to fine 20% of turnover compared to the previous 10% of turnover, and that also needs serious attention, because if this is going to come into force, then many companies will not be able to survive if they've been fined with 20% of turnover, if that's really justified to give such an harsh sentence. And then another point related to this is that the volume discount will not be allowed unless this will enhance competition. And we really need to clarify exactly what this means. Product registration intervention is very much practiced by Fertasa to assist the registrar. And in the process, we have dealt with several product registration interventions over the last 4 years. It started 4 years ago with 244, and this last year we've done 295 of these. We do, of course, have to do this in close cooperation with DAF, but the whole idea is to assist them, and not to fight them, but just to assist them on technical matters and to enhance the whole process. But we're doing this at a cost. Although the members and non-members can use Fertasa for this process, they have to pay for it, but still we are subsidizing it by about 50%. Certification of fertilizer entities is important to us because we need to ensure that all members abide by all the processes and protocols required for producing fertilizers. During the last year, 19 out of 51 ordinary members have been certified, but this is not enough for us. We, in fact, want all our members to be certified. Fertasa is recognizing 2 auditing companies in this process. I'm not going to mention the names now. The discount benefit on membership fees should result in more certification, because we've now got this incentive of reducing membership fees as long as our members will certify the production plants. Quality monitoring was again done in 2019, and I just want to give you a brief overview of this. It was done for Fertasa members as well as for other companies. We did reasonably well. If we look at the number of elements analyzed, it was just over 100 samples, but the number of elements were in 2019 342. And the Fertasa members actually complied to the set norms with 97.66%, and other companies only with 91.22%. You might ask, are we now satisfied with 97.66%? And my answer would be no, we're not satisfied. We wanted 100%. In fact, during the 2019 year, we did got 100% for nitrogen fertilizers, but we wanted for all the others as well, for the phosphorus and the potassium and the micronutrients, as well as the liming materials, which we haven't got yet. If we then go further down on this slide, and we look at the Fertasa certified and the Fertasa non-certified members, we also see the difference in 2019. We've got the Fertasa certified members to be 99.18%, and then again, Fertasa non-certified members 93.88%. Again, I want to emphasize, we really want this 100%. We must realize as members that there is a law to which we need to abide. And even if we just 1% under, we're not abiding by the law with 1%. So you may say I'm very strict and I'm very perfectionistic, and that is in fact what it is. We need to be 100%. That's the norm that we've set. Publications. We've got the Fertilizer Handbook, or Bemestingshandleiding, that we've sold 423 copies last year. This is a major effort, you must realize, to revise this book, which we've done, and it's now some time ago. We've done that in 2016 already. So the sales are now going down again. I'll show you the figures just now. But on publications, we've also got a newsletter. We've written articles, mostly Peter Homan that did that. We've got website visits of 19,000 and visitors about 44,500 on this website. We've got import-export data, which we are looking at, and we are publishing this on our web as well. The fertilizer use per crop per magisterial district was a major effort from Peter this past year to get more sales statistics, and I'll report on that a bit later on. Let's quickly go through some of the figures. As I've mentioned, the sales dropped, say, to the probably a low point at 2015, and it was 300 of just about 400 sales of the handbook. Then it picked up because of the revision of the book, and now it dropped down again in 2019. So it's probably time to rethink what we've published and to be proactive in revising the book again, to add more chapters to it. That is a huge task for all members involved. We've got the Basel scores, which you are quite familiar with. There's a steady increase in the number of students enrolling, increasing from 2018, when we only had about 28, sorry, then it was about 20, and it increased up till about 90 or more in 2018 and 2019. This remains a very important task of Fertasa with a steady increase. We introduced the PRAS course, which is actually training technical people to do registrations of products. And we had 12 registrations for 2020 already in the end of the last year, maybe it's more now. The events that we're organizing and that we have indeed organized, managed to do that in 2019 was the Congress, the Technical Symposium, workshop on Group 3. This is very important, Group 3, and there are still some gray areas that needs to be sorted out despite the workshop that we've done. We also had a workshop on soil acidity, and then some of our staff members did attend the August International Congress, as with the previous year, so they're very much involved in this, and this is both Peter and Prof. Robin Barlow. Congress delegates is steady attendance, I would say, of more than 160 during 2018, 2019, and we're really trying to get overseas speakers to make this interesting and also valuable to all the delegates that will attend our technical symposium as well as our Congress. In this case, it's now the Congress. The Congress is more on economics, politics, and the environment that we operate in, while the technical symposium is purely about technical matters. There you've got the technical symposium. Quite a number of delegates. There were more than 250 for a couple of years, which we're quite proud of. We continuously trying to improve this to bring in the latest information on technical matters related to fertilizer and plant nutrition research. We've also organized a couple of workshops to sort out burning issues. And that is about registration, the Fertilizer Act, biofertilizers or growth stimulants, the grey areas that I've spoken about. We had post-symposium workshops, and we also, as I've mentioned previously, had a soil acidity workshop in 2018, which was really well attended. Okay, now about the sales statistics, as I've said, this has really been a major breakthrough that we've achieved last year. We are using the fertilizer import-export data published by DAF, which would be accurate figures. We've also got a prediction model based on the area planted, the crop per magisterial district, to which we then apply an expected yield for each area, as well as an expected NPK application rate. So the prediction model is not absolute figures, but it's a model, it's a prediction. For that, for using that model and for revising it each and every year, we need satellite data. And Fertasa has paid for the satellite data for Mpumalanga in 2018, and also the Western Cape in 2019. But government needs to really pay for this and really needs to fund this, because it's in national interest and not just in the fertilizer society or the fertilizer industry's interest. It is important for the Crop Estimate Committee, and for that reason also very important to assess the level of food security in our country. It's also very important in monitoring the agricultural development all over the country, especially with governmental land becoming more and more available for developing farmers. This is just an idea, or not an idea, an actual picture of how it is done. The yellow blocks would be sunflower, the dark green blocks would be maize in this instance, and the purple ones would be groundnuts. To give you some idea how each and every patch of ground with different crops on it is then accumulated, at least to get a reasonably accurate figure on the area planted to different crops. So according to this prediction model, we've assessed the NPK sales from 2016 to 2019, and then also the physical tons. As you can see, there were not much of an increase in physical tons from 2016. It's around 2 million tons, physical tons of fertilizers in total. I'll report on that a bit later on. The P and the K is more or less the same, but the nitrogen is of course the most. But it's not a steady increase, might be possible with nitrogen. As you can see, from 370,000 kilograms of nitrogen up to 381, which might be a slight increase, but not really if you compare that with 2018. If you draw a pie chart from the physical tons, about 49% goes to maize, for maize production, 2.43 would be for sunflowers, and then it goes clockwise according to the legend on the right. So we've got almost 15% for sugarcane, which would be the second to maize, of course. And other large role players would be wheat and pastures. The 5.08 would be pastures, and the 4.47 would be for wheat. Of course, the Fertiliser Association of Southern Africa cannot exist on its own. It needs to liaise with many different role players in organized agriculture and all input suppliers and governmental organizations in South Africa as well as in the rest of Africa. And I'll just mention the names quickly. That will be the Department of Agriculture, DAF, the Grain South Africa, Agri-SA, AgBiz, which is the Agricultural Business Chamber, Agri-LASA, which is the Agri-Laboratory Association of Southern Africa, ESAF, East and Southern African Fertilizer Trade Platform, AFAB, the African Fertilizer and Agribusiness Partnership, ADASA, Agro Dealers Association of South Africa, SACNAS, which is South Africa Council for Natural Scientific Professions, and IFA, International Fertilizer Association, of which we are also a member. And really this is important. Many changes is going on internationally, and we need to also take note of those changes and not stay behind in the process. So that is why we really need to interact with IFA. Let's go on. The finances is quite liquid, solvent, and sound. We've received clean audits for all of the past years, not just for last year. We do have some money in reserve in investments, which is important for the ups and downs that we experience with the agricultural related organizations such as Fertasa as well. And then we must say we're a non-profit organization, so we're surviving on the membership fees mostly. And of course, we must be SARS compliant. Being a non-profit organization, it's not too difficult, and we're not a business, we're an organization. Right, let's get to the finance of, or the global financial picture of South Africa, not just Fertasa. And I like to express our GDP in terms of US dollars rather than rand, because it gives us a better picture. And it varied from about 300 billion US dollars to about 400 during the last years. There was a prediction of about 360 billion US dollars for 2020, but I'm pretty sure that will not realize because of COVID and many other impacts that had. But remember, this is not fertilizer related really. This is more about the South African GDP. But as you can see, quite a big fluctuation if measured in US dollars. Then the South African GDP annual growth rate expressed quarterly from 2010 to 2020, or just the beginning of 2020. As you can see, this is quite a downward trend. This is now before COVID, and this is now in rand. And it's not a pretty picture. What happened last year, we had a growth rate of 0.2%, and the previous year it was 0.8%. So we've been in trouble before COVID started, in fact. And really, the economics should play a bigger part in everything in our country. We should really look at that to be a sustainable country in all respects. South African GDP from agriculture. Now, there's quite a fluctuation, and I've spoken about the fluctuation before. It's up and down because of environmental conditions, of course. But if you take an average of 70 billion rand per quarter, that'll amount to 280 billion per annum, which the agricultural sector contributes to the South African GDP, which is considerable and not to be underestimated. Now, the fertilizer part of production varies for different crops. For maize, it will be from 32 to 34% if irrigated. For wheat, it'll be 34 to 40 if irrigated, percent of the total cost of production, which is really considerable. So cost in this respect will definitely impact on the profitability of producing these crops. If we compare fertilizer consumption, the production, exports, and imports in South Africa over the last 4 years, and we use the model for the consumption, which the figures of which I have shown you before, that is fairly constant, except for 2017, which was a bit higher. But if we look at the production, there's a downward trend. If we look at the exports, can't really say it's much of a downward trend, but a little bit of a downward trend. And then the imports, there's an increase in imports. Now, what's concerning is that there's a decrease in production and that there is an increase in imports. It shouldn't be. because it means that jobs are lost, income will be lost if you have to import more and produce less in your own country. You can express this in a different manner. You can look at the fertilizer production in relation to the consumption, but you can also look at the fertilizer production in relation to the consumption and consumption plus exports, which would be the lighter blue graph. The first one decreased, that is the production in relation to consumption, from 41% in 2016 to 24% in 2019, which is a considerable drop. Also, the second one, the production in relation to consumption plus exports dropped from 28% to below 20%. Not good trend, I would say. Luckily for us, there's a lot of fertilizer internationally that we can import, luckily in the sense that at least we can do that. It's available, but of course, at a cost. As far as nitrogen is concerned, the supply is still above the demand. So the balance would be the availability of nitrogen on the world market. Increasing, not really. It's actually the red figures is more or less stable, but at least we do have a surplus of nitrogen that we can import. With phosphorus, it's less of a surplus, but luckily we do have our own sources. With Phoscorn, we do have phosphorus in South Africa that we can utilize. But if not, then we have to import. I just want to go back to the nitrogen. We do know that most of our nitrogen comes in the form of urea that's been imported, and we're only producing LAN or CAN in South Africa, and of course also ammonium nitrate solutions that can be applied in a liquid form. But most of our nitrogen is also being imported. So as far as nitrogen is concerned, and also as far as phosphorus is concerned, there is enough, but we need to import more nitrogen than we have to import phosphorus. As far as potassium is concerned, the last one, all of it needs to be imported, and we're very much dependent on the import surplus and of course the import price that we have to pay. Which is products that are becoming more and more popular would be the advanced efficiency fertilizers, which includes controlled release, slow release, sulfur coated products, urease inhibitors, nitrification inhibitors, and water soluble powders. This is a presentation that was done by IFA, and it was based on Rams and Company's market analysis. And the figures that you see there is in metric tons. That is currently the assessment of the market for these products. My own prediction would be that at least for the advanced agricultural sector in South Africa, the use of these products will increase steadily in the years to come. And Fertasa needs to really seriously look at these products as well. Price trends. As you know, ammonia is the building block of the nitrogen fertilizers, and the world market, this is for the Gulf of Mexico prices. The top graph would be the retail price, and then of course you've got the wholesale price below that. Now the two will follow each other, but the one needs to be above the other for this fertilizer industry to survive. What I want to point out with these graphs would be the trends during 2019 at the end. There was a decrease in the ammonia price that you see at the end of 2019. Let me just go quickly through these. This is ammonia. For urea, you see the same. The end of 2019, there's a trend of a decrease towards the end. And then UAN, the same, decreased trend. For DAP, that is diammonium phosphate, there's a decrease towards the end of 2019. Again, for potassium, also a decrease. Now, if you look at another very important point related to the price and the availability would be the Rand US dollar exchange rate, because we need to buy most of our fertilizers from abroad. About 85% of our fertilizers we have to buy. And if we have a change in the Rand dollar to the worse, then of course it will pay more. Now, from before the year 2000, that is this is over the last 25 years, the Rand dollar was 4 Rand for a dollar, up to 16 Rand for a dollar. The end of 2019, I think it went even to 20 during COVID, but it gives you an indication that despite a drop in the price of the international prices, that effect of a drop of international prices will be countered by a weaker Rand, as you can see here. And then, in addition to that, a large portion of the cost of fertilizer is locally derived from increased taxes and levies, or levies on the fuel, and many others. Inefficient infrastructure, that is roads now, or railroads, basic services and rail operations, apart from the rail tracks, the rail operations, expensive, unreliable electricity with load shedding, unproductive labor. The opportunities. Agricultural development on about 34 million hectares that belongs to the government. There's such a huge potential in developing that, and the fertilizer industry can be involved in this. Examples of development of agricultural land we can find with a project from Grain SA, which is called From Subsistence to Abundance and Beyond, which is supported by Fertasa members to a very large extent. And the number of farmers that's involved at the moment is more than 5,000, and the hectares about 1,674. So this is one of the success stories of development of rural land for agricultural production. And just imagine if we can add another about 20 million hectares for maize production. Currently, we're producing all our maize on 2.6 million hectares, and we've got a record crop this year, which will be 15.5 million tons of maize, and a lot of that we can export, and we can earn foreign money for exporting the excess of maize. Just imagine if we can produce on much more land, much more maize, currently utilizing only 2.6 million hectares of about 30 million. I'm not saying that all 30 million will be suitable for maize production. But guys, if we can only add another 3 million hectares with really good production of maize, just imagine what will that effect be on our GDP and for the whole of South Africa. Then we should use more of the advanced efficiency products, which will reduce losses and increase efficiency of fertilizers. And growth regulators and growth enhancers should certainly come into play more and more in South Africa as it's becoming into play overseas. The threats is land expropriation without compensation and many other laws as well, climate exchange, which causes variation in production, and is really a threat, can be a threat during droughts, severe droughts. Electricity supply, which is, I've already referred to, transport cost, rand-dollar exchange rate. You can add a few here if you want. I'm not going to go into that any further. The relevance of fertilizers, it ensures food security, extend the life cycle of food. It increases disease resistance to crops. The pollution is kept to insignificant levels, because I've already mentioned that the fertilizer industry is really very much regulated, and therefore we're not allowed to have any toxic substances in our products. The fertilizers are too expensive to oversupply. It's really very strictly regulated. And of course, it results in a net profit per hectare for farmers as well. Conclusions related to the fertilizer industry, which Fertasa represents. There was a considerable growth in terms of membership. The smaller members were allowed to become ordinary members. There's an increased role in legislative matters, which I have referred to already. It includes the acts, the regulations of Group 3 products, product registrations, fertilizer monitoring, and certification of product facilities. Successful development of fertilizer consumption model per crop per magisterial district. That was one of the major achievements during the past year. Now, the environment in which the fertilizer industry needs to operate definitely affects all of our members. Investors' confidence decreased, and why do I say that? Because there was a decrease in production of fertilizer, mainly due to uncertainties about land expropriation without compensation and rising production cost and all the other related issues as electricity supply and transport and so on. At least we can say favorable international fertilizer supply and demand balances continue to exist. Therefore, we've been able to import a lot of fertilizers from abroad. There's a decrease in international fertilizer pricing during the latter part of 2019, but that was countered by the weakening of the rand and locally derived cost. Very good rainfall conditions, especially in the summer rainfall areas, had a positive effect on the fertilizer industry during the latter part of 2019. A huge potential exists in developing large areas of unproductive governmental agricultural land. And I want to emphasize this, that really the fertilizer industry is already participating in this development and will continue to do so. It is also, of course, in their own interest to do that, but they can really play a tremendous role. And what a magnificent country can we become if we focus on this very positive aspect. Enhanced efficiency fertilizers together with growth enhancers and growth regulators will play an increasingly larger role in future. Thank you very much.